Okay, welcome to this week's edition of All in the Mishpacha. I did not actually get Mishpacha magazine this week because they have delivery problems here in Israel. This is about the eighth or ninth time where they have failed to get it to me on time, and this time I didn't even have it before Shabbos. I had to borrow my neighbor's Mishpacha magazine. So I read most of it. The one thing that stood out to me was here. I mean, you can't really see it. His name is Gedalia Gutentag, was talking a small article, Times versus Hasidim, the British edition. It's been in the news. The New York Times has ridiculed the Hasidic community, specifically, the Haredi community, and specifically the Hasidic community for not providing adequate education for the young children. This is what it wrote in the Times of London about the Hasidim in England. Thousands of British boys as old as 16 can barely read and write English, with some being routinely beaten in unsafe schools because the government allows a strict religious group to deny them an adequate education. It says among the group in question, Hasidic Jews, girls are allowed to study secular subjects, but young boys receive a maximum of 2 hours of secular lessons each day before vanishing in mass. That's in elementary school. From school rolls at age 13 to enter unregistered religious schools where no English is spoken. I presume they speak Yiddish over there. It's England, not speaking Hebrew over there. Um, at the end of the article, he says that what they're really keying in on is the fact that the little possibility of choosing a life outside the ultra Orthodox world, meaning the Hasidic community is not giving their children an opportunity to explore other options, to get a secular education, to explore other options in the world. They just want to keep them ultra Orthodox. This is nothing new to people in America, to people in England, especially here in Israel. I live here in Israel, and I'm in a Haredi community here in Tulsa. My children are young. I have one son. Next year will be his first year. He's not going to the Cheder next year. He's going to go to English speaking Gan, private Gan. But in 2 years, he'll be going to a Haredi school here in Tulsa. There's really no other options over here. My wife really wants him to go to Haredi school. Um, as a parent, I'm a little nervous. I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell this to my wife, but I'm a little nervous. Um, Not that I don't want my kid to be Haredi, but I do want him to know English, and I do want him to have a decent secular education. Um, I grew up modern Orthodox. I went to YCQ, elementary school, Yeshiva elementary school. I went to Rambam Mesivta in Lawrence for high school. Again, a modern Orthodox Yeshiva high school. I went to Yeshiva University after that. So even though I grew up modern Orthodox, and I sort of changed over in Yeshiva University to a more Haredi type of lifestyle, um, I would say that I'm a little concerned because here in Israel, the boys don't learn English at all. The girls learn English. My daughters are going to learn English to the alphabet. They're going to learn in second or third grade, which is a little disturbing to me. I'd like them to learn it a little earlier. Uh, the 3-year-olds I send to an English speaking Gan, but they have, they hear English in the house. Me and my wife speak English, but when they go to school, they're learning basically Hebrew until second or third grade. They learn to speak English. They have actual teaching. I think throughout elementary school they teach them English. Um, they learn grammar and basically the alphabet, and they have the speaking aspect from home. So I'm not as worried about my daughters, but I'm more worried about my son because how am I supposed to speak English? I mean, I don't speak the best Hebrew in the world. I speak a decent Hebrew because I live here, so you need to know Hebrew also a little bit. But I want my son to know English, his primary language. I mean, English is, an international language that can help you anywhere. Hebrew is really limited only to Israel. It's only going to help you here in Israel. So I want him to have that exposure to international language. And frankly, also, the secular education, I think in the Haredi schools, the Chadarim here in Israel, they teach maybe in elementary school basic mathematics, maybe, multiplication is the most they get to, division and multiplication. Um, and basically that's it. Maybe, I don't know, a little science. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know exactly. I haven't had, my son hasn't gone through it yet, so I don't know exactly what they teach. But I know it's very limited. I know once they get to high school, right? Yeshiva Katana here it's called in Israel, he's not going to have any education except learning. And this is what, you know, obviously in America and England, it's, there's a little more secular education. I know most yeshivas, like say Yeshiva Torah Vadas, Darche Torah, they do have a pretty okay secular education. It's not the secular education I got at Rambam Mesivta, which is modern Orthodox. In the more yeshivish circles, there's less secular education, but there are certain standards that the Board of Education makes them follow. So they do get a secular education. My perspective on the whole thing is as follows. I'm pretty sure that the concept of a modern yeshiva, where basically you're exclusively studying Gemara or Mishnayos or Halacha, primarily Gemara, started with Rav Chaim Volozhin, the Volozhiner Yeshiva, who was the main Talmud of the Gra. The Gra initially did not want to give him permission to start a yeshiva. And then he recanted and said that he should start the yeshiva towards the end of his life. That's really the modern day yeshiva began. Of course, there were yeshivas throughout history. Poland, they had in the 1500s, they had different yeshivas. There's always been yeshivas, these yeshivas Shem Ve'ever over there. The difference is that I'm pretty sure that yeshivas was different and apart from the main education. I don't believe, we talk about Rashi. Rashi is a famed, commentary on the Torah and Gemara. He basically wrote the main commentary on Gemara, on Torah Shebaal Peh and Torah Shebachtav. But Rashi worked. He had a vineyard, his Rashi winery. A lot of people like to buy Rashi wine for Pesach because the low alcohol content. He worked, and I'm sure he had a secular education as well. A lot of the Rashis, Lazi Rashis, he wrote a lot of words in French. I'm sure he was well versed in French. I don't think, the concept going back many years is that they only exclusively learn Gemara and Judaic studies. I believe whatever community, whatever country the Jews were in exile, they were learning the host country's not only language, but also, basic mathematics, not just basic, probably mathematics, decent education in mathematics, history, science, maybe even philosophy, economics. I'm sure they were taught a lot of different things. So what was disturbing is that I read a quote, actually in this past week Mishpacha magazine, a quote by one of the Rosh Yeshiva at the Scranton Yeshiva in America. They're having a dinner, and one of the Rosh Yeshiva got up to speak, and he shared a story. Apparently, they were having problems for their yeshiva. They had filed late. They weren't getting the government assistance they wanted to get, and they had to go to Washington, D.C. to make an appeal because they had missed the deadline. So the Rosh Yeshiva said it looked very tense in the room. They weren't gonna give them the financial assistance they were seeking. And there was one person in the room who remembered many years ago, for a different reason, a biblical looking figure had said something that really left an imprint on his mind. What he said, and the person turned out to be Mordechai Gifter, who was Rosh Yeshiva from Telz. He said someone in that room with Rav Gifter was saying, a younger person was saying, I don't understand this, Talmudic education. Can't they be more open-minded and teach secular studies? Rav Gifter said back to him, he said, this is the education we've been teaching our kids for 3,000 years, and we're not going to stop because the government tells us to stop. Now, Rav Gifter was in charge of the Telz Yeshiva, which I believe was Yeshiva Katana, Yeshiva Gdola, maybe even elementary school. I don't know. He was talking exclusive education about Talmudics. Now, I think maybe he was just talking Yeshiva Gdola. I believe in Telz they probably have secular studies over there. But I don't know if I agree with Rav Gifter's statement. I don't know if I agree all the way in the time of David HaMelech. They were only teaching Talmud and Gemara. I mean, you don't even have the earliest recordings we have about discussions in the Talmud started around the Churban Bayis Sheni, right? About a century before Churban Bayis Sheni. That's when the Tanoim started to talk. Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar, those Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, they were like 100 or 200 years before the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. Meaning, going back to the time of David HaMelech, the beginning of the first Beis HaMikdash, Shlomo HaMelech, they had tons of wisdom. Shlomo Melech was not just wise in Torah; he was wise in every matter of the world. He knew all the secrets of the world. So that's obviously not just Torah knowledge. So to say that this is the way we've been teaching our children for 3,000 years, only the Talmud, they didn't even have it. The Talmud wasn't even written down. It was the oral Torah. You know, they were definitely learning secular subjects throughout history. The concept of yeshivas, even in Eastern Europe before Volozhin was, students had whatever education they had that was mandated by the government. And then they went ahead and, on their spare time, usually when they were of age where they were more interested in the talent, pursuing it on their own account when they were 18, or 16 or 18 or 20 or 25, or 22, when they were more interested on their own, they went to the yeshivas. There were big, Gedolei Hador, the Ramah had a yeshiva, I believe, and the Marsha. So they would go to these yeshivas and they would learn at these yeshivas on their spare time. But the main learning was not that. Obviously, they would learn the host country's culture and language, and they would have secular knowledge. They would be exposed to that a lot. The Volozhin Yeshiva was really the first time, and that's the reason the Volozhin Yeshiva closed, because the government came in and said, we want you to teach Russian, I believe. And I think in Netziv, right, in Berlin, he basically locked the door. He said, we're not having yeshiva, we're going to teach Russian. Even though it meant continuing the yeshiva, we're not going to teach even the Russian, the host country's language. We're not going to teach that in our yeshiva. So he locked the yeshiva. And that was really the basis of the modern day yeshiva. Now we think about yeshiva gedolas here. They don't take yeshiva gedolas. Once you're 18 and you go to yeshiva, there's no more secular studies for anybody. There's no college. There's no concept of college in the yeshivish world. They don't believe in college. And even the high schools, primarily the main education is the yeshivish education. I don't think this is the right methodology. Even me going to Rambam Masifta, I know it was a complete and utter waste. Both my elementary school and my high school. I hope my parents don't listen to this, but it's a waste of time for 99% of the kids. I remember there was one kid in my school, maybe one kid in my grade. Granted, I didn't have a big grade, 50, 60 kids. But there were maybe one or two guys in the whole school, 250 kids, that actually took learning seriously in high school. Everyone else thought it was a joke. They were sleeping through the classes. They didn't remember anything. It was a complete waste of time. And that's high school, and certainly elementary school also. And other people will counter and say, no, it'll remain embedded in your memory. Just like, I would say the same thing about most of the classes that I went to. That's the way I studied. I didn't pay attention during class, and I just read the books right before the test. And I did very well on the test, and I forgot it the next day, which I did also in college. But the difference in secular education and Torah Shabbal Peh, which is primarily what they teach in yeshivas, is that secular education, some of the facts will remain with you. The basic facts will remain with you. So you get a broad education. You're not going to remember every detail, but you remember the basic things, which will enable you to progress in life and go in the world. You'll have basic ideas. You can converse with people that are not Jewish. You could understand basic things in the world to build on that when you go into your profession. So some of the facts, the main facts that you're learning, secular education, will remain with you. People will say the same thing by Torah also. That's why it's essential yeshiva education. But I think the way Torah Shabbal Peh, which is the way, yeshivas focus on so much, facts don't count. It's an ongoing, I've mentioned many times, Torah Shabbal is an ongoing discussion. Unless you're interested in it, unless you're actively pursuing it, basic facts about what bracha you make on rice cakes is not really going to help you. It might tell you what bracha to make on rice cakes. That's not the point. Every yeshiva opens up, they tell you their point is to teach you how to learn. Teach you to learn the Gemara, teach a Gemara, to learn a Gemara b'i, and that's the point of yeshiva. Otherwise, you just learn Daf Yomi. I mean, nowadays you got me, so you can learn Daf Yomi and an Ian Shir, and you don't have to go to yeshiva. You got yeshiva YouTube, the best yeshiva in the world, guaranteed it is. Earn your money back. You're not paying any money for it yet. But that's basically what all yeshivas want to teach the kids. They want to teach them a methodology of learning b'i, and that has to be like it was in the old days in Europe, where people who were interested in learning, so they were able to learn from their mentors, from their rabbis, the great rabbis, learn a methodology and learning, and get to a deeper understanding and learn how to learn a Gemara by themselves. And that's what they learned from them. But you have to want that. Just to throw random facts about the Gemara, there's a machlokas, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Shmuel. It's not going to help you. Facts don't help you, right? I remember when when I was entering Yeshiva University after high school. I remember the interview. I was being interviewed. They wanted to know which year I would go, which program I would go in. They have 4 different programs over there. And I was interviewed, and I was wearing a polo shirt, the green polo shirt, I think. I don't remember it was green. And the rabbi, he said, "Are you wearing tzitzis?" He didn't think I was wearing tzitzis. Yeah, I was wearing tzitzis at the time. It wasn't tucked out, tucked in. He asked me to read a Gemara, a very basic Gemara, Maseches Brachos, the beginning of Daf Chav Vav, I think it was. A very simple Gemara. I couldn't read the Gemara. I had no idea how to read the Gemara. He was shocked. I don't know, maybe he was shocked, or maybe he was just upset that I couldn't read the Gemara. But I didn't know how to read the Gemara. I had to teach myself. And the way I taught myself was basically through the art scroll, just using art scroll. So, but it was only because I was interested. I became more interested. I had people that influenced me in a positive way at the beginning of my stint at YU, which propelled me to, dive into the Gemara and try to understand it as best as I could. But you have to want it. That's the way yeshivas always were. You have to want the Torah Shel Peh. If you don't want it, there's no value to it. It's random facts. You have to be, if you're going to be someone who's successful in yeshiva, you have to want it. I don't think it's possible for most kids in elementary school, almost every kid in elementary school, and most kids in high school are not at that level where they're going to be able to want it. They don't want it. Even in the from yeshivish places, they don't want it. They're not grown up, not mature enough. They're not mature enough to say, okay, I want to change my whole life. I want to take accountability for my whole life. I want to live a responsible life, and I want to live a life where I care about all my decisions, and I need the Torah to do that. And until you're 18 years old, you're not an adult. You're not someone who's mature enough to do that, really. I wasn't. Till I was 18 years old, I didn't have the maturity to want to learn Gemara. And that's, I think, how it always was. Yeshiva should be something extracurricular. It shouldn't be something, the main part. Even to have a double curriculum, which I had in high school, and they praised me, I don't know, I won valedictorian in high school, and in the newspaper it said I won valedictorian, and I did great, even though I had a double curriculum, learning, Judaic studies and secular studies. I still did amazing in secular studies also. I don't think there's a need for this double curriculum. I'm saying something really big over here, but I truly believe that public school is the right way to go. Now, people will say public school for a frum kid, a yeshivish kid going to public school. You know how many bullies there are? You know how much drugs there are? You know how much women there are, girlfriends? Terrible things they're exposed to in public school. And yes, they are exposed to those things. But let me tell you the truth. I mean, I don't know what it is in yeshiva schools, but I imagine a little bit. There's probably drugs over there also. But in modern, in my modern Orthodox Rambam, there were a lot of kids doing drugs. There were a lot of kids who had girlfriends, being together with their girlfriends. I heard about this at breakfast, people talking about the best way to be with your girlfriend. This is stuff that I heard. It's not something that yeshiva high schools are impervious to. So people say, send them to yeshiva high schools, not because of the Torah education, but you don't want to have the effect. You don't want to have the influence that public schools, being in a public school, has on them, and it's going to teach them to marry a non-Jewish woman. Maybe a little more, but is it worth it, putting yourself in debt? Because so many people have to go in debt for this tuition. The whole concept of these yeshiva high schools and yeshiva elementary schools, they cost so much money. Public school is for free. All this money you have to earn just because everyone else is doing it, and everyone feels an obligation to do it. You're spending so much money. You're going into debt. A lot of people, they can't pay their tuition, and the schools themselves trying to hire moras and rebbeim. There's a dearth of moras that want to teach in these schools. They don't pay them any money. They'll pay them late. There's a problem over here. If it's a problem, it needs to be fixed. The way of fixing it is get rid of all these mostos. Stupid word. These mostos, these education centers. Who cares? You don't need another Mossad. We have the Mossad here in Israel. The Mossad takes care of bigger problems. You send the kids to public school. And listen, when you have a religious community and all the kids go to public school, there'll be a significant amount of religious kids together. and it'll help ward off some of the negative influence. Of course, there'll be non-Jewish people over there. They'll have influence on them, but everything in life is a decision. Everything in life, you have to weigh the pros and the cons. And the exorbitant price of yeshiva education, combined with the fact that you're not really getting any education value. And there's a third point. The third point is, I mentioned this when I talked about anti-Semitism and relating to money, and when Jewish money show. A lot of people assume that anti-Semitism is directly related to Jews being very wealthy. And I said at the end, I don't believe that's true. The word anti-Semitism doesn't come from Jews. It's not anti-Jews. Semitism is from the word shame. Shame had the first yeshiva. Shame Aver. The reason that non-Jews dislike Jews so much is because they have this counterculture. They have their own culture, which is based on the yeshiva culture, right? Yeshivish. It's a new culture, right? We have our own set of values, our own set of what entertainment. That's the whole thing. We have a different kind of entertainment. Our entertainment is different, right? The way we spend our time is different. The way we dress is different. Non-Jews look at that. Why are you different? Why are you doing weird stuff, right? I'm not talking about the Torah mitzvah. Torah mitzvah is what we do. But to put on the extra stuff, to put on these black hats, to put on these shtreimels, you're making yourself weird. And it all stems from the yeshiva. The yeshiva tells you to live a Torah lifestyle. It doesn't just tell you learn the Torah. That's not what yeshiva is about. The whole concept of illusion, right? And yeshivas nowadays is and the Rosh Yeshiva, got this impression from my Rosh Yeshiva. They try to impress you, not just learn the Torah, not just keep the Torah and mitzvahs, to do more, have a Torah lifestyle, Shabbos table. There's a whole thing. It's not just eating a meal on Shabbos, eating lechem mishnah, and eating food on Shabbos that you enjoy. It's more. It's the Shabbos Suda. It's about Zmiros. It's about, having your kid at the table and teaching him about the Parsha. These things are, Shabbos Suda becomes part of Judaism. No. There's a mitzvah to eat bread on Shabbos. You don't have to make it into a Shabbos Suda. Concept of the Jewish music, the whole concept of Jewish music. We have our own entertainment. Yidflix, Yidpod. Everything has to be different. We're different than everybody else. Our phones can't be the same as everybody else. And the worst thing is our education has to be different than everybody else. And when you see the New York Times and you see the Times of London bashing the Hasidim are the most, they stick out the most out of all the Haredi people, all the Yeshivish people. Hasidim are the most different. They're just entirely different. They have the shtreimels. Even the way they button their shirts, they button right over left, as opposed to people button the rest of the world buttons left over right. They do everything on purpose. Beshita, different. They want to live in the shtetl. They want to create a borough park. They want to have their own neighborhoods here in Israel, Mea Sharim, that they don't want mix, because they call anything, they do everything to be different purposely, because they don't want to mix into the rest of the world, have a negative effect on Shpa against their Torah values. But that's exactly what drives anti-Semitism. The idea that we're a yeshivish world and we're doing something different. Our whole basis of the world is our education of Torah. That's all we do all day is learn Torah. According to the Shulchan Aruch, you must be Kovei Itim. It doesn't say just learn Torah all day. There's no, according to the Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't pass like the Ran and Maseches Nedarim. Technically, maybe there isn't Mr. Learn Torah all day, but there's other priorities. You have to get a job. The Gemara in Brachos says, Harbe Asuk Reb Shimon lo also be Yodan. Harbe Asuk Reb Yishmael also be Yodan. Right? You're supposed to work. You're supposed to work. You're supposed to get a job. The Gemara says all over, right? All Pirkei Avos is filled. Torah bli derech eretz, right? Right? It's not a good thing. It leads to sin. You have to have derech eretz. You have to know about the world, and you have to. And if you don't know about the world, you're not going to be very good in business. You have to know about the world. You have to get a job, and you have to earn money. And these are all normal things. And even if you assume there's a mitzvah to learn Torah all day, it doesn't mean in the face of neglecting responsibility and not earning a parnasa, So we've created, the yeshiva system has created this whole kollel system that we live in now. The kollel system didn't exist until 40 years ago, until Rav Shach and Aaron Kotler introduced Aaron Kotler in America. Aaron Kotler said, learning Torah is the most important. Learning Torah for the sake of learning Torah. But Pirkei Avos doesn't say that. Pirkei Avos says lishmor v'lasos is the whole thing. Lasos is getting up and getting a job, not sitting and learning. That's what I hear from the rabbi over here. The Gedolim say, sit and learn. Don't do anything. Just ask for tzedakah when you marry off your 12th kid. I have no mercy for these people that come around. I'm marrying off my daughter. I have no money. Well, let's figure this out. Why don't you have any money to marry your daughter off? Okay, because I never got a job. I'm learning in kollel. Yarei Shamayim. Talmid Chacham Avrech Yarei Shamayim. He's not Yarei Shamayim, because if he was Yarei Shamayim, he'd do what the Gemara says. Gadol Yonim Yiges Kaba Yarei Shamayim. The Gemara says Pshot Nevelta B'Shuka. It says go to the street and skin an animal to get paid a minimum wage, and don't sit and learn Torah. So what are you complaining to me? First of all, you're having 12 kids when you know you can't even afford one kid, and you have to be logical. You have to. It has to add up. It has to make sense. The yeshivish world makes a little sense for people that are not married. It makes no sense for people that are married and have kids. So this is where anti-Semitism comes from. It comes from the yeshivish world. And Rav Gifter, I don't think is correct. I don't think that this is the way we've been educating through that. Torah education and extracurricular education, and it's done on your own discretion. When you're interested in it, you're going to go and seek it. Right? You have to go and seek the Torah. Torah has to be taught to you. We don't have to institutionalize it and standardize it. That this is the way yeshiva high schools and yeshiva elementary schools. And unfortunately, here in Israel, because it's a Jewish state, so the boys in Chadarim don't learn, English, even English, and they're not learning English, and even in England, they're not learning English, they're learning Yiddish. So it's a very sad thing. So for those three reasons, first of all, the exorbitant price of tuition. Second of all, it's a waste of money because people are not even learning. And third of all, it drives anti-Semitism. So for those three reasons, I think public school is a much better option nowadays. Nowadays, it should always have been the option. I don't know why they have these things of yeshiva high schools that started in America, I guess, with RJJ and things like that. Whether you're yeshivish or modern Orthodox, I think public schools is the answer. Lessen the burden on families. Make it okay. Once a large contingent of people or a small contingent of people start doing it, everyone will do it. They'll move to the public schools. Yes, there's a goyish influence, but just like smartphones, I don't think you should have a filtered smartphone or not have a smartphone because you're worried about the goyish culture. Again, we have to follow the Torah. We don't just follow what the spirit of the Torah. What does it mean, the spirit of the Torah? The Torah says it's okay to have a smartphone. It's not a kosher phone. Kosher is by food. It's not by phones. If the Torah would have wanted, the Torah knew about phones. The Torah spoke for all generations. The Torah wanted to forbid phones, just like it would have said, don't eat non-kosher food. It would also said, don't have non-kosher phones. This is adding on to the Torah, it's Baal Tosef. You have to find the reason why it's usher to have a smartphone. You're going to see inappropriate images. A lot of posts you can say a bracha in front of an inappropriately dressed woman in an advertisement. How could that be? It's erva. If you're seeing it as erva, it's not erva if you see it on a screen. So there's no issur of seeing erva. And even if you argue it is an issur of seeing erva, right? Maybe it's a case where it happened by accident. You see an advertisement come up, so you could look away. You have a possibility of looking away, or even if you're not going to look away. So maybe it's part of being society. You're honest. You have to you have to have convenience, right? We don't have to see. You have to put yourself on the brink of death and the brink of making yourself so difficult for you. It's almost impossible to live nowadays without a smartphone. The whole world is running on smartphones, and even more in 5 years it's going to be like that. It's almost impossible. People are lucky here in Israel. Instead of sending text messages, they'll call you on the phone. It's going to stop soon, and there's no reason to ask for a smartphone. This is above the Torah. This is not what the Torah wants. The Torah tells you what it wants. We have to follow the Torah, not what avodas Hashem. Hashem doesn't want it. Why doesn't Hashem want it? The way of determining what Hashem wants is by looking at the Torah. So the same thing when it comes to secular education. I think it's very important, secular education. I don't know if college, I went to college. I don't know what I really gained by going to college, but I do believe in the formative years, secular education is something essential. You should learn basic science. You should learn basic math. I think until calculus, you should learn math. Calculus, that's so stupid. And, in terms of science, you should learn basic biology, chemistry, physics, and these things. History is very important, Jewish history. And I believe also education is faulty in that it doesn't tell you a lot of practical knowledge. A lot of that should be introduced into education. I think the whole world is teaching the wrong things. You got to know, people, they teach you about the 50 capitals of the United States growing up. I don't remember any of those, but it's kind of important to know the capitals of the different countries in the world. No one even knows how many countries there are in the world, different capitals of the world, the flags of the world. Basic geography. Geography should be taught a lot more in schools. They should be talking about Even famous sports stars, famous entertainers. That's Derek Harris. That's knowledge of the street. You got to know these things. Presidents, leaders of the world. These are people are important to know about different companies. To teach about the S&P 500, the 500 companies that compose S&P 500. Where are they headquartered? What are they doing? What are the major technology companies? These are practical knowledge that could help you in the stock market. It could help you just basic conversation with the world. Know the difference in private equity and public equity, venture capital, all these financial terms that a lot of people unfortunately are not familiar with in the Jewish world. These are important things, and there's also a lack of knowledge even in the secular world. People don't know basic things about the world. I see some of these videos on YouTube. They ask them to name 3 countries in the world besides the United States. They can't even name one. You know, they think that Paris is a city in America. I've seen some of these interviews. It's sad. It's very sad. Paris, in which country? It's in Italy. I mean, this is very sad that there's a lot of videos like this on YouTube. People don't know anything. So public school is the answer, I believe, for tuition crisis. It's not going to help you. I believe that once you're 18 years old, I think there's value in going to yeshiva to learn how to learn Gemara, because I think people will be more motivated at the time. But that should only be until you get married. After you get married, the Kolo idea I don't agree with. I don't agree with the Kolo idea at all. First of all, it puts undue pressure on the parents to pay for apartments, to support their kids. They're getting married too young. They have to be supported. They're not mature enough. People should be taught maturity. You have to support yourself. And you can get married young, but you gotta get a job. You gotta be responsible. You could have 6 years to learn, 18 to 24 or to 28. I recommend getting married at 28. People are not mature till the age of 28. 10 years of learning in yeshiva, I think that's a good thing. But obviously yeshivas can't be so closed off. They have to have, extracurricular activities like basketball and sports and stuff like that, so people don't go crazy. Unfortunately, I see this so often. People locked up in yeshiva, there's no outlets for them, and they go crazy. They get OCD. They have anxiety problems, social problems. It's a very sad thing. So there's a lot of problems we need to fix, but I believe that public education in America is the right way, and hopefully, I wish in Israel, they obviously have, in the non-Haredi world, they have secular education. But I hope even in the Haredi sector, they introduce more secular education. I hope my son gets to learn English. I want to speak to my son. Hope you enjoyed today's show. We'll see you in the next one.